Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Impact of Excellence. We were talking about how great it will be to see everyone after Thanksgiving and how grateful we are that you guys remembered that you'd actually registered for this webinar before you headed off for the holidays. So again, thank you for joining us. We will be sharing the recording of this webinar and the slides with everyone who registered. We have with us a panel today who are going to share with you what their experiences have been with their agencies, with their team enrollment in Pathways to Excellence. I'm Terry Bearden. I'm the project director for organizational capacity building here at the National Community Action Partnership. I work pretty heavily in the Pathways to Excellence program. So if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. All right, here we go. As always, we want to ground ourselves in the promise of community action. Community action changes people's lives, embodies the spirit of hope, improves communities, and makes America a better place to live. We care about the entire community, and we are dedicated to helping people help themselves and each other. So after our panelists speak, I will come back and share a little bit of details about the Pathways to Excellence program. But what we really wanted to do today was provide some of our agency leaders whose excellence teams have completed at least one tier in the Pathways to Excellence program, and just let them share with you what that experience was like and what the takeaways are. You know, we don't offer the Pathways to Excellence program just to offer a program. We are really seeking to support the continuous quality improvement and the continuous implementation of excellent practices at our agencies. So I will be quiet now, and I'm going to turn things over to Erin Wicks, who is the VP of Planning and Evaluation at Action for a Better Community. And they have achieved the silver tier so far. So, Erin?
All right. Thank you, Terry. Really appreciate the opportunity to share our experience with the Pathways to Excellence program. Um, I would say that this program has actually exceeded my expectations in terms of the impact that it's having. And my expectations were pretty high. So I'm really excited to share a little bit about how that's happened. I've kind of broken it into like five steps that somewhat align with how an agency might proceed through the program, because each of those steps kind of is a little insight into what our agency's experience was like and the impact that this has had. So, the first step in the program and really in any sort of organizational change effort should be to get your board on board. So I call this, do we care? Because it's easy to sort of say, hey, let's do this, and we'll check the box, and yay, we've got a little honor that we can put on our website, but we had a real honest conversation with our board about what this would mean and why we were doing it. Our CEO presented to the board exactly what the program is about and why he thought this would be good for us. They loved it. There was no, having to sell our board. They said this is exactly what we should be doing. We had two board members who put their hands up immediately and said, I want to be, on the team that's working on this. So we got full board support. And because of that, we were able to communicate to our staff that we're serious, like this excellence project. This isn't some passing fad. This isn't the flavor of the month. Our board, it wants us to do this, and we're going to do it. It also gave our board an opportunity to kind of be more self-critical and say, are we doing everything we could to support the agency? And what are the standards of excellence that apply to us that maybe could help us take things to the next level? So that was a really important step, and I just want to encourage everyone who's considering this journey. Don't don't take that step lightly. It's really important to get your board really engaged right from the beginning. So the answer to that was yes, we do care. Let's go to step two. Thank you. Um, so part of the bronze tier, and this is a requirement of all the tiers, but once you do it in bronze, you've got it in place. That requirement is developing an organizational profile. And again, you could approach this as an exercise in checking the box. Okay, we have to put together a document that says, here's who we are. We were founded in 1964, 1965. We provide these services, blah, blah, blah. Um, that would be a huge missed opportunity because our excellence team used this as a chance to really ask ourselves the question, who are we? How do we tell our story? Like we want to be one of the best community action agencies in the country. Do we even know who we are as an agency? And then having to put that into a short 3 to 5 page document. It surprised me the impact that this document had. And I put some of the benefits on the slide here about, focusing us on a common understanding of our agency and a common vision, getting our excellence team on the same page. But to me, the biggest thing that I take away from doing that organizational profile was that a colleague that I've worked with for over 20 years, he was here before I got to ABC. He read the final draft. We reviewed it as a team, and he said, and this is someone who doesn't, really talk a lot. So it meant a lot coming from him. He said, there are things in this document that I didn't know about our agency. And that really blew me away because this organizational profile is supposed to be foundational. It's supposed to be like, this is who we are. And the idea that we had someone on our team who's been at the agency for years who didn't know something that we thought was important to our identity, that really spoke volumes about where we are and some of the work that we need to do. So that second step, the organizational profile, was another big step for us in our journey. Step three for us, that was learning the standards. So I'm supposed to be talking about a silver agency, but I think a lot of our learning came right from the beginning at the bronze level. So if folks are considering that, there's a lot of value even starting out at that initial level. Um, a key part of that is learning the standards and watching the e-course and having everyone complete the e-course so that they understand that the standards aren't just words on paper. They really mean something. They are actual best practices that agencies are using. And I think that really resonated with a lot of us. I don't know if the e-course has been updated, but the one that we looked at had a couple of presenters. One was kind of Mary Beth, she was good. The other one though was incredible. And I would say if you can watch the e-course with that presenter, it'll he'll change your view of the world. Um, I'm being a little sarcastic. It was me. I did it when I was at the partnership. Um, but seriously, the e-course was really helpful for us because it got the team onto a common foundation and language about the standards. We all had to do the course, and you know, if you didn't do it, there's evidence. Like there was like a record of like, yep, so and so completed this. So it really was our starting point to say, what are these standards, and what the heck would that mean for our agency? That's where we really started having conversations about what have we gotten ourselves into? Because there's a lot in those standards. But that's exactly the conversation we needed to start with. So again, step three, what is excellence? What does that mean? Really important for our team and for our agency. Another part of the excellence program, and this is really getting more into silver, where you start doing the self-assessment. And for me, that was captured by the question, where are we? Now we know what excellence looks like. Now, where are we relative to these standards? And I'll be honest, our team went into this thinking, we're a pretty good agency. We're probably going to be like most of the way there. Yeah, we got some things to tighten up here and there. Well, when we really got into the standards and we realized that in order to accomplish the silver tier, we needed to meet or exceed um, like a majority of the standards in like two categories. I thought that was going to be easy. We actually had to have a lot of conversation about which categories do we think we could do best in, because we looked at some of the categories. There's 7 categories. We looked at some of them and said, we are not there. Like we're just not going to meet the standards. We're close in some cases, and others maybe not so close, but close isn't good enough. You have to meet or exceed the standards, and in a lot of cases, it's not easy. And it kind of surprised us that we weren't quite where we thought we were. So that self-assessment played exactly the role that it's supposed to. It was that it was that that wake-up call of like, oh, okay, so we're not quite as excellent as we thought we were. But that's why we're doing this. And if you're not ready to do that and to say maybe we're not quite in the place that we want to be, then you really shouldn't be going on this journey, because that's what it's about. It's about being honest and saying, we can do better. We've talked about doing better, but now that we look at how we rate compared to what best practices really look like, now it's time to really like put our money where our mouth is. So I strongly recommend, if you're an agency that is thinking, maybe we can just skip silver and go right to gold. We feel like we're in good shape. We'll just go ahead and do the full self-assessment. I would strongly urge you to think about maybe just taking that next step to silver and seeing where you are. Because if we had gone directly to gold, we wouldn't have made it. And I think that would have been really discouraging for our team. So this is a good example of how the step-by-step pacing of the program really worked for us, because we needed to go one step at a time. And I have one more step in our journey. Um, and this to me is the big takeaway for our agency. And that is, um, how have we kind of like implemented the concept of excellence? Because there are standards that say, do you do this with your board? Do you do this with your staff? Do you have these resources available? Blah, blah, blah. And those are, really important things. But the biggest takeaway for us has just been the idea that a culture of excellence has a certain general way of doing things. And we had not been acting that way. And specifically, it's the 3 principles of: what approach do you have to doing something in your agency? How are you implementing that approach? And are you achieving results with that approach? And when we use those 3 concepts and we look at our agency, we realized that in a lot of cases, we did not have a consistent formal approach. We just kind of did stuff. And a lot of times it was good, but that's not excellence. That's improvising and getting by and being lucky that you're able to do that. We don't want to live that way. We want it to be routine. So we've had to think, how do we make our practices uniform and routine? How do we have a process for stuff rather than, oh, Aaron does it this way and so and so does it that way. And like, no, 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 no. As an agency, we do it this way. That's having the common approach. Um, Implementation, that was another big learning opportunity for us. We have not really done a great job of measuring operationally how we are implementing systems. Because Roma says, look at your impact, look at your outcomes. And that's important. But if you're implementing systems, you need to know operationally day to day how you're doing that. And I think a great example is a fiscal system. You can't just say like, "Hey, it's month end close. Did we pay our bills?" Like, it's too late. You've got to have a process for monitoring that stuff, daily or, at least more frequently than once a month. So, operational measures to track how we're doing our day-to-day activities, that is something that we are also now a lot more focused on doing. And we've never really done a lot of that. And then impact and results. That's something that Roma has always, told us we should be doing. But now we're trying to do it in a more agency-wide way. And the standards of excellence talk a lot about an agency-wide scorecard. We have never had one until now. And we're just beginning to implement that so that we can have a snapshot at any given moment of how we're doing and where we're having the impact that we want to have across our agency and where we need to make some improvements and how those different operations fit together. And that's the value of the agency-wide scorecard. It's not, well, finance is doing fine, but HR really needs to, make some improvements to what they're doing. No, it all connects together. And so we're just beginning to implement that agency-wide scorecard so that we can think more as an agency rather than as different programs and different departments. So that's kind of where we are in our 5 steps. If you're wondering, like, hey, you guys got silver, what's next? Are you going to go for gold? Yes, at some point, but we're going to pause for a moment and we realize we've got some work to do to get to gold. Um, which is great because that's what this is about. Learn what you need to do, get the systems in place, and then take that next step. So we've cleared the silver threshold, and now we're looking at agencies like Matt's to figure out how do we get to gold. But I think first, Marissa, I think you're next and talk about your agency's experience with silver.
Thank you, Erin. Um, can I just say ditto? Like there are so many things that you completely hit on. Terry, should we open up the floor in case anyone has questions for Erin just initially or
Yeah, let's take a moment. Anybody have any questions for Erin? We also will provide an opportunity after everyone has spoken, but just in case, did anybody have a burning question for Erin right now? You can either come off mute, which is not scary at all, or pop it in the chat and we'll read it out for him. Anybody? Okay, I don't see anybody coming off mute. Let's go ahead, Marissa, and maybe something will come to mind while you're speaking.
okay. Hi everyone, and thank you, Terry. I feel very honored also to be invited to speak about Pathways. Um, it's almost like Pathways is a little bit of a cult in our in our world. Like the best cult possible though. Um, so I did want to give a little bit of information about our agency. I think one of the things that's always really fascinated me about community action, when I first started, my predecessor said to me, if you see one community action agency, you've seen one. And that didn't make sense at the time because I kept thinking, well, we all have this common thread. We all have the promise of community action. And it wasn't until I really started to um, get deeper into understanding community action that I realized just how accurate that statement was. Um, so I will talk a little bit about my agency. So we are located actually in the southeastern part of Los Angeles County in California. There are two other community action agencies that are both public that operate also in LA County with myself. Long Beach alone is the seventh most populous city in all of California. So we have about 450,000 residents just in Long Beach alone. And I think, are around 44th in the nation. So it's really interesting when you look about when you think about the just the differences in organizational types when you think about community action agencies. There's not very often where I see other community action agencies that are more city-based. I see a lot of county-based organizations. I am so fascinated by the agencies that have multiple counties that they operate. I think it's really interesting. And so when you look at, like, for our service territory, because we are in the southeastern part of Los Angeles, my CSBG territory covers roughly about 13 cities, about 42 zip codes. But my LIHEAP program actually covers a significantly larger portion of the eastern Los Angeles border. So we actually butt up against Orange County and San Bernardino, but only for our LIHEAP program. And so it was really interesting for me when we were starting this program to really look at how different our organization operates with our different funding sources, because our CSBG service territory does not cover all of my LIHEAP service territory. Um, so I do think that's something to really take into consideration what really your agency specifically looks like and how it's embedded in the communities that you serve. I think that's a really powerful way to approach the Pathways program. To give you just a little bit more information about our agency, we do have some core programs. So we operate LIHEAP, which is by far our largest program. We also do youth programs. We operate the public access channel for the city of Long Beach, which is something fairly unique to us. We have VITA. And because Long Beach and our surrounding cities have, I think there's about 1,600 service providers that are similar to the things that we do, we actually utilize a lot of our CSBG funding to do small grant making so that we can enhance the work that other agencies are doing that are very similar to the vulnerable populations that we serve. So now I will jump on to Pathways. So you can see from this slide, I actually became executive director of LBCAP 1 month before COVID hit. And that I had been at the agency for roughly about 10 years before that as a director and then the chief operating officer. Um, and it was really, I mean, as you all know, all of the experience that we all shared together, COVID was everything just revolved around the pandemic at that time. And everything also really just revolved around making sure that we expended the CARES funding as efficiently, as quickly as possible. And so while I had been at the organization for 10 years, um, it wasn't, I really didn't have the breadth of community action until I actually started my CCAP program. So a couple years into my executive director role, a couple years into kind of COVID settling down a little bit, I took on CCAP. And CCAP was such a just a wealth of information. I mean, it was shocking to me how much information I did not know about community action. And I didn't know how much better I would be able to operate the organization understanding that history. And so once I completed CCAP, it was once I really heard about the pathways and the tier system, like to me, it just felt like a no-brainer. Like I knew once I jumped on CCAP, we started the bronze the very next year. We got the silver the year after that. Um, Leah, you're so funny. Sorry. Um, and it has been really such an amazing stepping stone for us. And one of the things I really love about Pathways is I think that Pathways grounded our organization because if we can go to the next slide, Terry, real quick. So one of the things that I think was really most impactful about Pathways was how it helped develop our culture. Again, being a new executive director, in 2021, I had my board really take a step back and look at our mission and vision statement, and we redid our mission and vision statement under this new leadership that we had and the direction that we were going forward post COVID. And in 2022, we then had our staff define our core values. That was something that we hadn't done before. And having the mission and vision and then having the core values, Pathways really brought them all together. It was amazing to me because I felt like um, we had an opportunity to ground our perspective in our core values, in our new mission and vision statement, in a way that I think we didn't have before. And so the culture of the organization, I think, really started to solidify the direction that we were moving to. I think Aaron talked a lot about the impact of the board involvement, and it also felt like an opportunity because, again, being a new executive director, I was still developing my board and having the board have an opportunity also to ground itself in this direction of looking at pathways, I think was really beneficial to us. And the other thing I will move on from culture is the intentionality of the Pathways program. I am one of those people that I just love being intentional. Like I don't like having meetings for the sake of having meetings. I just want everything to be grounded and really thinking about the Pathways program. And again, hearing a lot of what Aaron was talking about, you really do have to ground yourself in understanding how you move forward. The organizational profile that we did was enlightening. We had such we had a lot of fun actually, really thinking about how to tailor everything that we want to say about our organization in just 5 pages. I think it was like 5 pages that we had to do. And that was it was shocking because I think we had some similar experiences where people were like, I didn't even know that information was available. I didn't even know how we were able to fit and strategically look at what made sense for our organization. How have we spent the last 46 years? That's how long LBCAP has been in existence. And really what to add to make sense of who we are now, what to include to make sense of who we were before, how you meld those two together so that you really paint a complete picture. I think that organizational profile was amazing, and it's also helped us since we include our organizational profile in our onboarding for all of our new employees now. It just gives a nice snapshot of who we are. It also comes in handy when we're writing grants because we've already taken a lot of time to write about certain things that, kind of mesh well with writing a grant and having the grantee or the grantor understand who you are as an organization. Um, and then I'll jump into the self-study. It's so funny hearing you, Erin, talk about kind of your experience because our experience was very similar. When you look at the standards, um, it it makes you take a step back, and when you look at the different standards and you look at them and kind of in their totality, you also think like, we do this. Like this is going to be so not easy, but it's not going to be as hard as we thought it was going to be. And when you take a step back and you actually look at each individual standard and you think about how you actually have to answer the question. Like Pathways is not about telling a story that you think everyone wants to hear. It's really about answering those questions and grounding your answers in enough information that somebody can visualize and see how you are meeting those standards. It's so easy to say, oh yes, we have our board review our employee handbook, blah 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 blah. But when you have to actually take a step back and say, okay, did they formally adopt it? Are you reviewing it on a regular basis? All of those things that you have to take a step back to do is really, really, really helpful as you move forward, kind of strengthening your organization. Um, in a lot of ways, we had to think about how to make the standards work for us because, again, community action is not one size fits all. And the standards are written in a way that you can think about, okay, how can we make this work for us? How do we, you know, have get the feel of what we need to and how are we meeting those standards and what are we doing that we're not meeting those standards? We really had to take an opportunity and confront the uncomfortable in a lot of ways. Um, Especially because, a lot of my board members, my executive team, we're all type A personalities. Like we were like, it was nice to invite other people outside of our executive team into your Pathways to Excellence group because you get different perspectives and you have an opportunity to think of things in a different way. We um, really even like look at our strategic plan so completely differently. You know, in a lot of ways, I was thinking like before, like the strategic plan. Um, a lot of people just do a strategic plan, put it on the shelf, and say, again, you kind of checked off that box. And when you look at all of the things in the standards that have to roll back into your strategic plan, again, that intentionality of making sure that you are covering X, Y, and Z is really, really, really helpful. Um, and then Aaron talked about the scorecard. We had never done a scorecard before either. In a, and honestly, like the scorecard was kind of like a bad word. Like I was like, "Ooh, I don't like that. I don't like, there's also in the standards like equivalent to scorecard, which makes me feel so much better. But I also had to take a step back and be like, why is it a bad word? Like, what is happening that I am not comfortable or, not wanting to show everything that makes sense in the scorecard? And a lot of it is always like, we're too busy working that we don't have the time to take a step back, and process the things that we're doing. And so that's actually why I chose sustainability as kind of the third thing that has wrapped around us. Because sustainability, like everything about pathways, equals sustainability in my world. Like it's when you look at how you have to do formal processes. I think I was relating to Aaron when he was talking as well, because there were things that we've implemented that we just didn't document well enough. We knew that we did them. We knew that we did them well. But if you turn around and try to find your documents that, actually talk about what processes, what procedures, what what was the reason why you did it, what was the outcome of why you did certain things, again, all of that, when you take a step back and you go through the Pathways program, you start making sure that those are the things that you document. And we are only in the silver tier. And much like Aaron, we're taking a step back before we go into the gold because we want to make sure that when we actually do gold, that we pass it. Um, but it has me thinking constantly. Like I approach things differently now because I know that I'm going to have to document it. I'm going to have to do it through the self-study. And I think that makes a big difference for how we approach our day-to-day activities as well. So that is everything I have to say about our experience. Thank you for your time. I hope I didn't talk too long.
No, you did great. Does anybody have any questions for Marissa before we turn things over to Matt? I don't see anything in that, but I'm hoping that you're all just saving up all your questions for the end, right? Okay. All right. Well, I'll leave you alone and I won't pick on you too much about it. And we are about to hear from an agency that has achieved the gold tier. So I'm going to turn things over to Matt Hinkle, who is with Eastern Action in West Virginia. Matt?
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here and to share this journey. So just a little bit about me. I am the executive director, CEO of Eastern Action. Our legal name is Eastern West Virginia Community Action Agency. And when I describe it, I say we're located in the northern mountains of West Virginia. So I've covered every direction but south. And during a needs assessment strategic planning review in 2019 and 2020, we decided to register the doing business as Eastern Action to try to shorten that. Because when you're doing your elevator speech, when you have a name that long, you've lost your folks before you've finished your elevator speech or your introduction. So, but I do like to show just for the geographically, like where we are. So those blue counties are our CSBG counties, and that is 6 counties, rural in West Virginia, that has a population of right around 100,000 people. So we're a quarter the size, less than a quarter the size of Marissa's agency in California. And then those 4 counties with the red, we provide weatherization services in those counties as well. So our Pathways journey began really, on the next slide, there's some stuff written out, but I have on there 2019, but it really began earlier than that, in a sense that I was inspired by United Planning Organization, which is the agency that is located in Washington, D.C. And my first introduction to UPO was back in the medieval times, we actually took the CCAP exam in person and had to travel somewhere to do it. So I had to travel to Washington, D.C. and take the exam, and we took it at UPO's headquarters. And it struck me when I went in, everybody from the security guard outside, the receptionist, the IT person, it just like everybody treated you with so much respect and kindness. And then I think it was that year at the national conference, they received the Award of Excellence. And so that was the old model, which was all or nothing. And so kind of fast forward to 2019 at the West Virginia Community Action Partnership Conference, I had a conversation with an NCAP staff person about the Award of Excellence, and then reviewed the standards and was like, whoa, this is not even remotely a reality for us anytime soon. And that kind of got tabled because, some crazy stuff happened in 2020 or started in 2020. And but in late 2021, in one of those emails from the national partnership, it may have been the weekly newsletter, I see this tiered approach to Pathways to Excellence. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I think I sent some emails and ask a few questions and kind of got the skinny on it, so to speak. And then I called our board chair, and I am blessed, as it sounds like a lot of the other presenters too, to have really, really good boards. And my board chair just said, why wouldn't we do that? That sounds incredible. And so the board they were all in. And I contacted our state office to see if they would be supportive of us using, we receive some discretionary training funds every year, if they would be okay with us using those. And they thought it was great. We were the first agency out of the 15 in West Virginia that were willing to pursue this. So we did enroll in bronze and silver at the same time, but we did the tiers separately. So we did bronze and everything that goes with that. And then we, after we wrap that up, then we approach the silver tier. So the silver self-study in 23. Now, one of the things we did was we chose to submit 3 categories instead of 2. I would not do that again. I would just do the two. But that was my lack of understanding of really how the big picture all came together. But once we received our feedback report from the silver tier, we did enroll in gold. We had all, that was a goal of ours that we did. So then the next slide, we like to show off a little bit. So we had some decals made for some of our vehicles that we have being a kind of a spread out rural area, we have an outreach vehicle called the Mobile Action Center. So we have the stickers from our Pathways Awards plastered on it, along with our logo and some other things. But the feedback was incredible from both of the feedback reports. And we found that we were doing a lot of things really well, but we had not formalized it. So we still joke, we use the phrase ad hoc because that was when the NCAP staff, which at that time was Mary Beth and Tawny Stottlemyre, were working with us on our feedback review. They kept saying, you guys are doing a lot of stuff really well, but it's ad hoc. And so we just kind of thought, oh, maybe we should make that our agency slogan. We're the ad hoc agency. But we formalized a lot of things between silver and gold. We had actually already started some of it. The scorecard, as Marissa said, that was a pretty overwhelming and non-existent thing in our world at silver. But we had a scorecard in place with gold, and it's still evolving. And we took a good bit of time between the receipt of our silver feedback and by the time we submitted our gold self-study to really gather the trended data and to have some impactful data on our scorecard and on some of the other standards that come into play. And again, we received our self-study in December, about a year ago, December of 2024, which was perfect because we do our needs assessment and strategic planning in the same year. So 25 was a needs assessment strategic planning year for us. So it was awesome to have that feedback report as we began planning how we were going to approach our needs assessment and our strategic plan. So what's been the impact of pursuing excellence? Well, again, mentioning the changes we had to deal with in 2020, right before it was apparent in March that we were probably going to have to shut down or partially shut down or limit services, or you guys all know, who knows what we were going to have to do. We found, and I had become director in June of 2018, so I was less than 2 years into my role and had not had a chance to really get into policies because any of you that have become a director of an agency know there's a lot of fires that you have to put out that you don't realize for the first couple of years. But we probably had a 4-inch thick stack of printed policies, none of which addressed even anything remotely to quarantines or anything but like COVID was. But the other part that was even more alarming, as I was going through the policies, none of them indicated a date they were passed or by whom. And so then I started going through the board minute books back probably for 10 years and could not find where they were even approved by the board. So probably the biggest initial impact of pursuing excellence was we got our policies in shape. And we got a review process for our policies. So we have, at a minimum, all the policies that are addressed in the standards of excellence, we have those. But we have more, of course, because I thought I coined that if you've seen one community action agency, you've seen one community action agency. So I guess I didn't have a trademark on that one. So, but you have other policies. So what we have a process where we have a committee that reviews the policies every summer, and then at our August board meeting, we present that whole body with any recommended updates to the board. So we're actually reviewing our policies, all of our policies on an annual basis. And that's been huge. So that's given us the foundation we've needed to grow. And so we have, about a year and a half ago, we were approached to become a regional implementer for an energy rebate program that I do believe is nationwide, but was getting kicked off in West Virginia. So in addition to our 10 counties that we'd always provided, or actually our 6 counties, and then I don't want to get into that, but so there's like an additional 8 counties beyond our base CSBG counties where we're helping implement this or helping get this energy rebate program off the ground. That's for the state of West Virginia, that's an $88 million program over like 5 or 6 years. Now, of course, it's on hold from the feds right now, but once it gets going, we're going to be able to help a lot of folks with that. And then this past summer, we applied for a veterans related program that we're actually going to be doing over the entire state. We just have found that out recently. At one point, it was 36 of West Virginia's 55 counties, and it's going to be all 55 counties. The other thing that has really, I think, just among the team, everybody's just really excited about it and proud of their accomplishments in getting this small agency. We're one of the smallest agencies in West Virginia. We have about a $5.5 million budget. We're not, we don't have a Head Start program, but we have the reputation of being pretty innovative. And I hope that rubs off on some of the other West Virginia organizations or agencies. So kind of to wrap up, what would we have done differently? Again, we would have only done 2 categories for silver instead of 3. We did not review the document as well as we should have before we submitted it. We had different people on the excellence team doing different components of it. And then, so when you read it coming back, it really didn't have a uniform voice. And I wasn't aware of that at the time, but I've become a pathways reviewer in that time period or in the last few years. And that's been really helpful for approaching the standards. And that is something, there is some training coming up. So hopefully I'll get my check from NCAP for giving this plug, but I would highly encourage you, if you are serious about pursuing excellence, to think about the peer review program, because it really kind of gives you more insight, and you're having some interaction with other folks that have been either through the process or reviewed, and you do not review policies or you do not review self-studies from agencies within your region. So I noticed there's someone from Garrett Community Action, which is a neighbor. Actually, I'm going to be in Oakland in about an hour, dropping my son's car off to get worked on. But like, I could not review Garrett's, even though they're in a different state, because we're all part of Region 3. And you also recuse yourself as a reviewer if you know anything about that agency. Like I had to do that because one of the guys I was working with, a CCAP mentor, his agency submitted. I didn't even know the name of his agency. And I'm like, yeah, I don't have a conflict. Well, I read the organizational profile, saw the executive director's name, emailed Mary Beth and said, I have a conflict because I don't know anything about his agency, but I know him via Zoom, and I do not feel comfortable with that. So there's a lot of integrity in this process. And I know this isn't anywhere on the slide but from just working on submitting the self-study, and it is confidential unless you choose to share that you have enrolled. But as we, approached the gold self-study, we applied a lot of the lessons that came back from the silver self-study. From gold and what are we going to do in the future? Well, I'm not good at creating the agency-wide scorecard. That was a challenge, but I'm always creating scorecards because being an accountant, I was the CFO before I became the director. I love Excel. And so if I can do something in Excel, I'm all over it. So I created a Platinum Dream scorecard, which I have all of the standards in a spreadsheet with columns so we can kind of self-evaluate over the next, 3 or 4 years of how we feel like we're doing before we sort of jump in and say, okay, do we really feel like we're ready to submit ourselves? But that is something we would like to do in the next 3 to 5 years is enroll and do the self-study for the Platinum Award. And I think that's it for me, Terry.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt before I share a little bit with you? Hands come off mute. Michelle, hey, come on. Michelle.
Oh,
You came
I
off
didn't
mute.
mean
Now
to come off,
now
but
you have to talk.
I didn't necessarily mean to, but I was going to type in the chat. Basically, can you explain a little bit more about the Platinum Dream scorecard and what you're thinking that entails?
Sure. It basically is all of the standards written out, and then I have a column of did we meet it in silver, did we meet it in gold, and then I have like the years, 2025 through 29, I think, where I can just indicate how we're doing with that. So if it's say one of the ones that say, the related to maybe the strategic, and I'm spitballing here, but I can't think exactly, but something related to the strategic plan, that is actually going to get updated before we would ever apply for that. But did we check all the boxes and do we feel like we're meeting that ourselves? Have we reviewed the mission? Is the mission statement review up to date? Those kinds of things.
Thanks, Matt. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to close things out here. I need just a couple more minutes of your attention. Here basically is are all of the activities and an estimated timeline for each of the tiers. And you'll notice by kind of just the way things are laid out here that the tiers really do build on each other, right? And I think that all three of our speakers today have really spoken about how that progression works and the value that they have seen in it. I also see that as I work with agencies, the agencies that have the most satisfaction in terms of their experiences are the ones that go through it sequentially. Some of the things here as far as timing goes, the 3 to 6 months for bronze, 6 to 12 for silver, 12 to 18 for gold, and about 2 years for platinum. We've only had a few platinum agencies, so we're still kind of gathering that data to see what that looks like. The platinum is a very, very, very self-driven process. The other tiers have a lot of support from NCAP. For the bronze tier, for example, I work closely with all of the agencies as they progress through the bronze tier. For silver and gold, Mary Beth and I and Leah Paletti, who is also on our meeting today, we work closely with a tiered cohort approach. So we have our silver and our gold tier agencies come together and really work through the standards and make sure that we are providing the information that agencies need as they move towards putting together their self-studies. And it was mentioned during the presentations that for silver tier, when you complete that abbreviated either 2 or 3 category self-study, you have to meet 25% of the standards in order to achieve that tier. And for gold, you have to do a complete self-study, all 7 of the categories, and you must meet at least 50% of those of the standards. And then the big enchilada, of course, is platinum, where you have to meet all of the standards and have a site visit by a team and really, demonstrate that you have achieved have met or exceeded the standards and have the systems in place that Matt and Marissa and Aaron were talking about to sustain that over time, right? We don't want the Pathways to Excellence program just to be a point in time pulse check. We hope, and we've heard from our leaders here today, that it really does change the way your team works together. It changes your processes ideally. And so it's about that sustained focus on excellence. That's what we love to see from agencies as they move forward. So next, my question is, anybody want to become a peer reviewer? We are having our annual peer reviewer training on December 10th and 17th. There are some criteria that peer reviewers have to meet to actually serve as a peer reviewer. The training is open to anyone in the network who would really like to get that deeper understanding of the Pathways program and then potentially serve as a peer reviewer in the future. So let's see, I was going to pop that in the chat. Let me copy that and pop this in the chat. Oh, look at Aaron. Game on, he says. So here is the link to register for that training, or you can grab this QR code. And what else do I have? Let's see what else we have for you today. Oh, how many of you are going to come see us in Orlando? I know some of you will. Again, grab this QR code if you would like. And if you have not registered for MLTC, we're going to be in Orlando at a Disney property. And so hopefully you guys will be able to join us. I see that Clarissa, you've asked about how often is the Pathways peer reviewer training? Typically, we do that once a year. And it tends to be in the last quarter of the year. So yeah, if the timing is not good for you, we will definitely promote it about probably November or so of 2026. All right. Last but not least, please take a minute to complete a brief survey for us. We really, really actually do utilize this information. It's not just for fun. And some of the things that we ask you guys in our survey is one of the things that we ask is whether you are interested in being contacted about enrolling in Pathways to Excellence. So if you are interested, just add your contact info and I will follow up with an email to see how we can help you guys figure out what your path might be. So that's what we had to say about that. We have 2 minutes in case there are any other questions. I want to thank all of our presenters. Aaron,
Terry?
yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know that there are a few folks from state associations on the call, and I really love the idea of state associations trying to pull together a small cohort of agencies to go through the program together, because it can it can build some bonds among the agencies, and it can also then provide a platform for the annual conference for your state agency, your state association, to kind of have those agencies talk about some of the things that they've been doing. So if that's something folks are considering, I think it's a great idea. And I think a lot of state CSBG offices would be supportive of something like that.
Yeah, I think that is something actually, Aaron, that we're kind of taking a look at what that might look like. State associations, you want to talk about if you've seen one, you've seen one, right? Some state associations are literally one employee, and have their plates extremely full. Others have, departments and staff galore. So, but yeah, that is something that we are considering, is how we can engage with state associations as they support their member agencies in Pathways. So yes, thank you for that feedback. Any last words from Marissa, Matt? Yeah, money would help, Lawrence. I hear you. I hear you. That would always be helpful. So as soon as we find that pot of gold, we will definitely share it across the country. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate your time. We again will share the slides and the recording with all of you. Thank you, Marissa, Matt, and Aaron, for lending your time and talents, and we will see you next time. Don't forget that survey, please.